There's something in my hallway closet. I never believed in the supernatural, in the whispers of darkness that some say lurk in the corners of our world. This was before the apartment. I won't bore you with how I found the apartment. In short, I'm a programmer. I needed a new place before my next freelance project and luckily found a cheap place that was one bedroom within my budget. I saw that hallway closet the first walkthrough and gave it no heed. It was just a storage space with peeling paint and barely large enough to walk in. I mean, I've got to push the door closed when my clothes are hanging in there. The first time I noticed something amiss was on Wednesday evening 2 weeks ago. I just returned from dropping my resumes at the tech companies. I was weary and mindlessly scrolling through my phone checking to see if anyone had hit me up on one of the many freelancing sites. As I passed the closet, a chill traced up my spine. I paused, glancing at the slightly ajar door. Odd, I muttered, convinced I'd shut it that morning. Shrugging it off, I closed the door firmly and continued my evening routine. I think I kept closing that closet for a better part of 2 days without much thought. I would close the door firmly before leaving for work, only to return and find it slightly ajar and think nothing of it. I thought I was forgetting to close it, or maybe the old wood was just warping further. You know those doors that are so old you have to push it closed and either pull it up or down to get it to latch. That's what I told myself. Even though I could easily explain it away, there was something in the back of my mind warning me about it. Then came the night that changed everything. I was curled up in bed, my lamp casting a cozy glow as I lost myself in a tech manual. The hallway past that closet terminated in my bedroom, and I had not closed the door. Why? It was my house, and I was alone. The room was silent, save for the soft rustling of pages. Then, a faint creak. My eyes flicked up, heart skipping a beat. The closet door was open, just a sliver, but enough to let the darkness within seep out like a physical presence. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. Slowly, I set the book aside and got up, my movements stiff with unease. I approached the closet, my hand trembling as it reached for the door. The wood felt unnaturally cold under my fingers as I shut it, making sure to lock it this time. Back in bed, I tried to convince myself it was just a quirk of an old apartment. But as I tried to settle back into my book, a soft click echoed through the room. My heart pounded in my ears as I sat up, staring at the now open closet door. The lock was undone, the door slightly ajar, as if mocking my feeble attempts to secure it. From then on, the routine was the same each night. I would close and lock the closet, only to find it open again, its dark maw gaping like a silent scream. I tried everything, barricading it, nailing it shut, but nothing worked. Each time I turned away, it would open, as if an invisible hand were at play. Sleep became a distant memory. I lay awake, staring at the door, fearing what might emerge from its depths. The darkness within seemed alive, breathing, waiting. Whatever was in the closet was not in a hurry to get out. I began to see things, shadows flitting in my peripheral vision, whispers in the dead of night that woke me up. In the day, it was an ordinary closet. I searched it and there was nothing in there. At night, it took on this feeling of a living being watching me through the crack that popped open every evening. Then, one night, in a fit of desperate courage, I decided to confront it. That was probably the 12 or 13 beers that I had down. I left the door open, staring into the abyss. I refused to allow this thing to keep taunting me. A few hours passed, my eyes focused, my body rigid with tension. It was about 1 a.m, the alcohol finally fading from my system, and my eyes growing heavy when I saw it. A pair of luminous eyes staring back at me from the crack in the door. I couldn't see anything else in that blackness as it peered at me. It knew I saw it, and I knew it saw me. The sight of those eyes, unblinking, unyielding, cleared the rest of the booze from my head. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was frozen, trapped in its gaze. It felt as though it was peering into the very essence of my being. The air grew colder, the shadows in my room stretching and twisting to grotesque forms. "I know you're there," I whispered, my voice trembling. The eyes didn't blink, didn't move. They just watched, unwavering. Then slowly, The eyes closed and opened in a lazy blink when I heard a guttural voice causing my skin to crawl respond. I know. The hallway closet door closed and locked itself, which broke the spell over me. Since then, I've been in my car trying to decide what to do. I don't know what it is or what it wants, but I can't afford to move somewhere else. Maybe it's not dangerous. Maybe it just needs a home too. I'll find out tonight when I go back in. There's gotta be a way out of this. Neighbor always lights a candle in the window at midnight. One night, I decided to light a candle too, and now I can't sleep anymore. My name is John, a young man who just moved out of his parents' house at the age of 20. In search of a lower cost of living, I decided to move to the small town of Renoval Bay in southwest Michigan. It's one of those American towns you see in movies. Spaced out houses all built similarly. Most of the residents are elderly, making it very quiet for most of the year. No noisy parties, speeding cars, or anything like that, which I particularly love. However, shortly after moving, I noticed something strange. My neighbor, Mr. Anderson, has the peculiar habit of lighting a candle every night, religiously at 11:50 p.m., and placing it in his window. He stands there for about 15 minutes, gazing at it, and then goes to sleep. On nights of strong wind or rain, he tends to shield it with something similar to a lantern. I really wanted to know what that was all about. Was it a superstition? A local tradition, ancient enough for only the oldest of elders to remember? I didn't even know how to ask him about it. I briefly mentioned it to an elderly woman, Mrs. Percy, a very kind neighbor who would often show up at my door with sweets and cakes. When I asked, however, she simply changed the subject, and this happened more than once. One day, I gathered the courage to approach Mr. Anderson directly. I walked up to his door, nervous, and knocked. He opened it with a friendly smile, and I, hesitatingly, started asking about the candle. He listened to my question, and for a moment his eyes seemed distant, as if recalling something. Then he simply said, "It's just a family tradition. Nothing for you to worry about, young man." Unsatisfied with the vague answer, I tried to insist for more details, but he politely closed the door, saying he preferred to keep family traditions a secret. I was frustrated, but my curiosity only grew. I decided to search for information at a small cultural center in town, hoping to find some record that explained the tradition or someone who could shed light on it. However, my effort was in vain. The files were scarce, and the few available details about Renoval Bay didn't mention anything about lighting candles. I tried talking to the officials who handled the center, but they acted similarly to Mrs. Percy. Gradually, all this denial of information became an obsession for me. I waited all night by the window, just waiting for the moment when he would light the candle. On a holiday eve, I even stayed up all night to see if the candle would go out or when he would remove it. He removed it at exactly 5:55 a.m. I was running out of ideas. For a while, I even kept an eye on the neighbors' houses, watching if they would do the same. For some reason, only Mr. Anderson had this habit. With few options left, I went for my emergency plan. On that day, exactly at 11:50, I placed a candle in my window and lit it. It had been an intense work day, and I really needed to sleep, but I couldn't now. I sat in an uncomfortable chair in my room, facing the candle to avoid falling asleep. It didn't work so well because slowly Orpheus called me with his sweet song, leading me into Hypnos' arms. I was relaxed, unconscious, when I heard a noise that made me jump from the chair. It was knocks, something hitting against the wood of my door. I looked through the window and saw Mr. Anderson at my doorstep. He knocked one more time. "I need to come in," he shouted. "Let me in." I rushed down the stairs, still confused with everything. I approached the door as the pleas intensified, but when I reached the door, about to grab the handle, something triggered my instinct. I felt there was something wrong, and I decided to check before opening. I approached the peephole, staring at the one who disturbed my sleep. He was there, a familiar neighbor, but different. His mouth was open at an unconventional angle. The voice didn't come from his lips. It seemed to emanate from the black hole that was his mouth. His eyes darted frantically from side to side, unfocused on anything. From his chin, a thick foam dripped, forming puddles on the floor. His arms, now bleeding and twisted, seemed crushed by the wood, judging by the way they contorted. The blows intensified, almost as if the door was about to come off its hinges. I ran to one of the cabinets and pushed it to block the passage. It went on like this all night, until 5:50 a.m. I wondered why no neighbor woke up with all this racket. I saw him through the window, returning home, entering, and exactly at 5:55 a.m., appearing at his window to remove the candle. The rest of the day was a nightmare. I was sleep deprived and had to drink about 5 cups of coffee to make it through the workday. This sleepless night left me like a human wreck. I had to go to work in that state, and the 5th cup of coffee in my hand felt like an illusory comfort as I tried to stay awake. I couldn't help but think about the events of the previous night. The image of Mr. Anderson desperately banging on my door haunted my thoughts with every blink. At the end of the workday, I decided I needed to understand what was going on. I took the way back home, nervous, tense. The town was shrouded in a peculiar silence, and the lights of the houses hummed faintly. The street was deserted, with no sign, completely normal. His friendly and welcoming smile was back, in contrast to the hold that was his mouth the night before. He waved when our eyes met. The scene was so distinct from the disturbing image of the previous night that I almost questioned my own sanity. "Good afternoon, John." He greeted it as if nothing had happened. "Good afternoon, Mr. Anderson," I replied, trying to keep calm, even though my heart was still racing. I hoped he would mention something about the previous night, but he continued the conversation as if nothing were different. We talked about the weather, the neighborhood, trivial things that made no sense in the face of the terrible experience we shared. I was eager to get inside, passed by him and went in, but before closing the door, I couldn't help but ask, "Mr. Anderson, are you okay?" He frowned, as if trying to remember, but then shrugged. "Oh, the usual young man, a backache here and there, but nothing major." I didn't know what to think. His answer was so casual, as if I were imagining things. He greeted me, and I saw that there wasn't even a scar, let alone wounds on his hands and arms. Could it have been my imagination? Unfortunately not. I'm well aware of that now because night after night, he comes to scream at my window, saying he needs to come in, regardless of whether I have a candle lit or not. Believe me, I've tried both solutions with no result. I'm really starting to get used to this. It wouldn't be such a big problem until yesterday. I was setting up the desk to block the door. As always, I had already put the furniture on standby when Mr. Anderson started his nightly noise. I was about to go up to my room, put on my headphones, and sleep when I passed by the staircase facing the back door, and then, while my neighbor screamed desperately that he needed to come in, I heard a single knock on the door in front of me. Since I lit a candle in my window, my neighbor asked every night for me to let him in, and now there's something knocking on my back door.